you saw some things happening in Ottawa, probably then the residual effects of it anyway, where you had, effectively a telecom meltdown.
Yes.
You had, I think it was 4 companies producing about 70 or 80% of your jobs, and all of a sudden you had to, preside over the restructuring, if you will, without letting your talent get away, keeping that rich base of invention and the PhDs that you talked about, all that amazing intellectual capital that's out there. Was that something you looked at and said, that's one of the reasons I'm going to do this, and here's how I'm going to do it?
That was part of it. And really, I've never felt more optimistic about the economy in Ottawa as I do today. We had the meltdown of 2 of our largest companies, JDS and a company called Nortel. But this is the second time Ottawa has been through that cycle. When I first got into the industry in 1971, there was 10 companies in Ottawa that employed 1,500 knowledge workers. One of the major parts of that infrastructure, a company called Microsystems International, went bankrupt. And out of that were spawned a number of small companies. And as those companies became successful, you saw many other entrepreneurs or technology-oriented people jumping into the business and taking advantage of the boom. So between 1971 and today, we went from 10 companies, 1,500 people, to 1,800 companies plus, and 80,000 people. So when Nortel obviously started its decline, it's provided Ottawa with a wonderful new opportunity to start small companies and take advantage of that intellectual capital. And that's happening. We have a number of, we're starting companies at the rate of about 3 to 5 a week in Ottawa. And they all have the same profile. They're all 3 to 5 people and heavily technology oriented. And they're all going after a piece of that action. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time over the balance of this next decade in the city of Ottawa.
I think so too, and you can feel it when you're up there. But the interesting thing to me was that usually when places lose jobs, people move away, or if you don't have a good retention strategy, they move further away.
Well,
but in your case, I saw some things, and you can elaborate on this, that kept people there. There was certainly a quality of life that was articulated every place I went. But you've also put some mechanisms in place. You've got methods, your Lead to Win program and others, that very specifically are sort of an entrepreneurial factory. Am I right?
You're absolutely right, Lou. I think you've hit the nail right on the head. Ottawa, 90% of the people who live in Ottawa will recommend Ottawa highly or very highly to their friends outside the city as a place to live and to work and to raise your family, which is a tremendous positive to have when you're building an industrial sector. But on top of that, we put, the community has gotten together and we've created both a mentorship program and also a training program for technology-oriented CEOs. And the Lead to Win program, which I think is what you were referring to,
if you can talk about that,
is a wonderful program that takes someone who's got the germ of an idea and puts them through a very structured process over 2 or 3 months, where they get to deal with successful entrepreneurs, university professors, people who know how to make things happen, and they get to be criticized. They get to work with other people. They even have an opportunity to expose their ideas to venture capital and angel capital organizations. And at one point they have a graduation ceremony. And we've been so lucky in the city of Ottawa. This program has created 80 companies in the city of Ottawa.
And it's kind of a boot camp, isn't it?
It's a boot camp. That's exactly what they call it.
You don't just stay in there forever. I was told by Tony, a professor, I can't remember his last name.
Tony Belletti.
Belletti. I should remember that. He's Italian. But he said, this is sink or swim at the end of the day. So you've got this sort of rigorous process for processing these ideas through, yeah?
Yeah, very rigorous, and the people are quite critical. But just like English writing, when you're being critical of English writing, it allows the entrepreneur to see their idea from the vantage point of outside experts.
Right.
And most of the people come through the process just delighted, and the business plan that they had when they went in is quite different than the one that they come out with. Yeah. And it has an inspiring success rate. And out of these 80 or 90 or 100 companies, there'll be a sparkling 1 or 2 that will show the signs of being having the potential to become very large organizations.
Yeah, which is obviously something
Yeah.
you need in the modern economy. You need to churn out those ideas.
You know, at the height of the high-tech boom in Ottawa, we had 100,000 employees, and I'm sorry, 80,000 employees,
Yeah.
and we lost 20. We lost 20,000 employees.
Most
We're
of it-
now back up to 80,000 employees, but the ratio was a little bit different. We lost about 20,000 of the lower paid assembly workers, testing workers. Now that 20,000 employees have been replaced with more engineers, technologists,
Yeah.
computer design engineers.
And also R&D. I met with Research in Motion, which I didn't know had an office up there, but they do, and they said, we stay here because these people know how to execute on ideas. They're innovative. They're thinking at a high level about this. So
Yeah.
they decided to stay there, and I think they're growing. if
Well,
I'm not
it
mistaken.
was actually quite interesting why they decided to stay, because they do all of their mobile apps in Ottawa. They have they have about I think 500 or 600 people, 700 people in Ottawa.
Something
But they
like that.
couldn't hire these people to go down to one of the other cities in Canada. The people wouldn't move. So they decided if they couldn't move them into their city, that they would come up and form a very a focused development lab in Ottawa. And they did that, and it's been quite successful for them.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned another word which I found to be sort of in the fabric or the DNA up there, which was mentoring. You know, we talked with a couple of young entrepreneurs who were gathered for me. One kid was still a college student. He had $1 million business, providing services to people, washing windows. Literally, that kid was grossing $1 million a year. And he said, I'm a student. He said, I'm going to stay here because I think I can do well. But the one thing he mentioned was the mentoring. He said, yeah, you know, I can bump into the mayor. I can bump into O'Brien on the street, and he'll spend time with me talking about my ideas. And that's very unique, I think, in a big city.
Yeah, we have an entrepreneurial spirit right back from the days of the early lumber barons in the city of Ottawa. J.R. Booth was a lumber baron. He created in Ottawa not just the largest lumber company in Canada, the largest lumber company in the world. And so we've always had that very robust balance of entrepreneurship and government activities. Superstars like the Michael Copelands and the Mike Potters and the Terry Matthews have created targets for people in Ottawa to try and emulate. They've created a model that is successful, and there's nothing succeeds like success. So as more of us see these people and see them becoming successful and driving driving their businesses, it encourages many other people in the city of Ottawa to do the same thing.
But that issue of mentoring, again, I found it very, very, very important in terms of doing all kinds of attraction, psychological attraction, economic attraction, networking. You know, I like to talk and write about the new tribalism, how tribes are reforming, either locally or globally, with the connection of ideas and like-minded interests. There seems to be something, I call it tribal or cultural, where people feel an obligation to mentor there. And it's not forced on them, obviously. Am I perceiving that correctly? Because it does seem to be there.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. That you know, I never thought of it in terms of being an obligation, but I think people simply enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And there's so many young people in our city that are searching for an opportunity to grow a company. That is really something that I personally feel, and I know many of my successful colleagues feel is something that we want to do. Mm-hmm. Because in there is going to be another gem, and you know, aside from the fact that you might be able to get to be able to invest in a company, you also get the satisfaction of seeing another company growing in the region, and you know, we can't have enough of them. I'd like to see you know, Ottawa evolve into becoming the creative capital of Canada, as well as being the political capital of our country.
Yeah. Well, I think you're on your way. I mean.